Okay, I am sick and tired of everybody saying that ECW went out of business because it was too violent. ECW was not too violent compared to like other indie promotions like CZW and fucking XPW. Well, that died too, but and even like IWA Mid South and all that shit and like all that hardcore Japanese wrestling overseas. ECW was not too fucking violent. It was just edgy and fucking it was like the same shit you were seeing in the Attitude Era, except it was like it wasn't toned down. Like Vince McMahon toned it down a little bit. ECW just went all out with it. They didn't give a crap, obviously the wrestling was much better because wrestling in the Attitude Era. Let's be honest here, it wasn't like great, but at the same time, it didn't need to be great because they were trying to put good stuff on TV. They were trying to put good angles on TV and stuff like that. But everyone always says like ECW went out of business because it fucking it wasn't as like mainstream as like WWF and WWE and WCW, or it says like, oh, they lost a lot of money. No, the ECW made a lot of money. You have any idea how many people love that company? All right, the reason it went out of business was because Paul Heyman was not only a bad businessman, but because they pretty much put all that money into their ECW on TNN time slot. They were trying to get that time slot so they could be on mainstream television instead of just only having hardcore TV, which was basically only on syndication. It wasn't that, oh, ECW was just too violent and that's why it went out of business. No, no, no. Shut the fuck up. You don't know anything. Go watch the fucking go watch the rise and fall of ECW. Go watch, like, ask anybody. Ask like even Simon Diamond, wrestlers who were in the company and stuff like that. Like ECW went out of business because they were putting all that money into the TV show. Ask the Sandman. It didn't go out of business because it was too violent or because it was a niche only product. If ECW had like the airtime that WWF had, and like basically like the huge Titantrons and stuff like that, it would still be in business today. All right, you have any idea how many people bought like RVD 420 T-shirts and stuff like that? All these ECW Hardcore Revolution T-shirts and stuff. Man, ECW like had a huge fan base, and it would have only got bigger too had they had the opportunity to grow. It wasn't because it was a niche product. It wasn't because it was too violent. It wasn't because it offended everybody. Because if that's the case, the Attitude Era would have went out of business compared to WCW. All right. If that was the case, then ratings for the Attitude Era would have dropped. All right. CZW wouldn't even be in business today. That company wouldn't even be in business. That company's still in business. All right. They don't have any major TV deals or anything either. The reason ECW went out of business was because and only because they kept pushing all that money that they were making to give to TNN. At the time, TNN, now we know is Spike. But they kept giving it to TNN back when it was like this good old boys, Christian, redneck type network. And, that's how it was. That's the reason it went out of business. It wasn't because it was so violent and all this shit, and the people keep saying, man, it was the 90s. People loved edgy shit. People would love it today. All right, are you kidding? If ECW was so bad, how come the rise and fall of ECW DVDs sold like through the roof? All right, ECW One Night Stand sold through the roof. As a matter of fact, Hardcore Justice, it was one of TNA's one of like the highest grossing pay-per-views. Like, go look it up. It was like one of their highest grossing pay-per-views in the history of that company because they tried to put on an ECW show. All right, and the ECW, like, honestly, I've moved on. I want the wrestling business to get better, but stop bullshitting people and saying that ECW went out of business because it wasn't that good or because it was too violent or they didn't make enough money. They made a lot of money. It was just that Paul Heyman was stupid and he gave all that money to TNN. Plus, Paul Heyman is Jewish, so he kept some of that money on the side. And no, I don't care if I sound anti-Semitic. I don't. I don't give a fuck. I'm not here to be politically correct. ECW wasn't there to be politically correct. You know, it's not like I'm saying, "Oh, I want Hitler to enslave the Jews or anything like that." No. All right? I got friends who are Jewish, all right? Some of my favorite artists, David Draymond, he's Jewish. You know, this is getting off the subject matter here. But, you know, fucking, I wouldn't be surprised if Paul Heyman kept some of that money for himself. I mean, he's from Westchester County, folks. A lot of people don't, like, you look into this fact. If you live in New York, you have any idea how much rent costs, how much it costs to raise kids and shit like that? I wouldn't be surprised if he took some of that money for himself. All right, he's from Scarsdale. I know where he's from. Okay, I've seen him at where I work. I've seen him. I've seen him with his children. All right, so he probably kept some of that money for himself. I'm not trying to air dirty laundry or anything like that. I'm just speaking the facts here. I'm speaking what most likely probably would have happened, because I mean, it doesn't take it. All it takes is common sense to figure shit out. But you know, of course, you know, giving a lot of that money to TNN and making, you know, just so they can have a major TV deal. But then obviously, you know what happened. You know, Raw was coming to TNN back in the year 2000. And, you know, they got kicked off. You know, they were offering all this money to Vince McMahon, which was stupid. But again, it's business. So, yeah, it was shitty business, but business, you know. That's the reason ECW went out of business. It was because they kept pushing all that money into the fucking TV show, to ECW on TNN. All right? Their pay-per-views were not like amazing numbers, not like, you know, like WCW's pay-per-views or WWF's pay-per-view numbers, but I mean, they were pretty fucking huge for like for an indie company, for a smaller company, not even an indie company, but a smaller company. You know, they were able to get video games. Obviously, just look at your screen, look at the that was like one of the images for the video game for the N64, the PS1, the Dreamcast, you know, but it's just like, I'm sick of people saying like ECW wasn't that good and that's why it went out of business, and that's why the business has to go in a sports entertainment route, because nobody wanted to watch ECW or WCW, and people lost interest in WCW because it was just getting stupid. They were not making the right choices, and I'm sick of all these wrestling fans saying, "Oh, people do want to watch traditional, boring wrestlers like Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero." No, they didn't. The ratings went down. The ratings went up when Kevin Nash was on TV. The ratings went down when Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero and Booker T were on television. They went down. All right. They went up for a little bit in 1996 because people hadn't seen that style of wrestling anymore. But then when WCW started to fade the cruiserweights in a different direction, by like 1999 and stuff like that, you know, people lost interest, and just, you know, that's what happened. You know, so I'm sick of people saying like, "Oh my God, the cruiserweights were the reason people wanted to watch WCW." No, they weren't. It was the NWO angle. It was Goldberg. It was Sting. Those were what people wanted to watch. Those are the type of wrestlers people wanted to watch. All right, cruiserweight division was cool, but it was not like, it wasn't the reason why Nitro beat Raw in the ratings. All right, just like ECW being too violent was not the reason it went out of business. These are all false accusations by these retarded internet fans, these stupid marks that don't know what the fuck they're talking about. All right, if ECW would have had a better television deal and AOL Time Warner never would have merged, you know, both ECW and WCW would still be in business today. All right? Or at least they would have sold them to somewhere else, you know. It wasn't like ECW could have got on, if ECW could have got on another network, they would be set. All right? And if WCW would have, like, if Eric Bischoff would have purchased the company and found like another television network, then that would have been set. It would have been set. Like, people say like, "Oh, WCW, the name brand value was so shitty." Like, come on. WCW's name brand value in 2000 and 2001, as bad as it was, is not, it wasn't unmarketable. It wasn't unmarketable. All right, and ECW sure as hell wasn't unmarketable. All it needed was mainstream exposure, you know. And again, just look at the sales of the Rise and Fall of ECW DVD. Look at how the first two one night stand pay-per-views did. Look at how Hardcore Justice, those numbers. Look at those numbers. Look how good they were. All right, so just chill the fuck out, and you know, come to reality and realize that yeah, a lot of you marks were wrong, and just shut the fuck up already.